The Wolfenstein franchise is nearly as old as video games themselves, but we aren't here to talk about the history of the series. All you really need to know is the franchise at its core has always been about one thing: shooting Nazis, and 2014's soft reboot of the series, Wolfenstein: The New Order, made waves for its modern graphics, full narrative, and characters. Between this and Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus and the prequel Old Blood, there's been a nice selection of critically acclaimed anti-Nazi shooters from Machine Games under Bethesda to choose from. And then Wolfenstein Youngblood, a two-player co-op FPS developed by Machine Games and Arcane Studios, released in mid-2019 to critical apathy. Some called it a pretty okay game, with others going as far to say as it's a death of the series. Now, there were some who would point to the game's introduction of the famous Anya and BJ Blazkowicz's daughters as the playable characters, and call the game terrible for that reason. And those people aren't worth listening to. Professional reviews of Youngblood point to many flaws worth addressing, but claiming the game is bad for having female protagonists is just boilerplate sexism. Just wanted to get ahead of that. No, after having played Youngblood myself, I can say that its character writing, while a bit all over the place, more on that later, isn't what's wrong with the game per se. Balancing decisions, technical problems, and monetization mechanics are where Wolfenstein Youngblood really went wrong. But is the game still fun despite all that? Let's talk about it. Now, while Youngblood offers a single-player experience with an AI companion, it's clearly intended to be played with a friend in two-player co-op, going so far as to grant a player who buys the $40 deluxe edition of the game a buddy pass, allowing a friend to play with you remotely for free, although I'd argue that makes the $30 standard version of the game not really worthwhile, unless somebody else you know has also picked up the game for themselves. Regardless, I was playing on Xbox Game Pass, so that's irrelevant in my case. You and a friend are playing the roles of Jess and Soph, two sisters with power suits on a quest to find the missing Blazkowicz. You travel all over an alt-universe in 1980s Nazi-occupied Paris. In this world, the fascists have mechas and laser cannons. If you're not at all familiar with Wolfenstein's setting, Mecha Hitler and all, don't worry about it. That's not really my point here. The rebooted Wolfenstein franchise has thus far featured different forms of functional character progression, unlocking upgrades to health, weaponry, and your stealth capabilities. However, Youngblood goes all in on this, featuring out-of-narrative character progression, meaning you level up and gain perks regardless of where you are in the plot. This is done by battling enemies, finding collectibles, and completing main and side quests to gain experience. Each level grants you points to buy perks with, your aforementioned standard upgrades. And separate from this, silver coins, a currency which you gain from looting Nazi stashes, can buy you weapon upgrades, new powers, and cosmetic skins. All of this progression is independent of your co-op partner, meaning you can play on your own or with other players and maintain your progress. As a result, one player looting a crate or picking up a collectible will not automatically grant it to both players. This can work to your advantage in the case of armor, health, and ammo caches, as you don't have to worry about, say, stealing the last medkit from your partner when they're low on health. Although I'd appreciate some visual indication for when, for instance, a suit of armor has been picked up by you, but is still available for your partner. In contrast, quest objectives, things needed in order to complete missions or progress the story, will mostly sync between players, as in one player picking up a battery needed to power a laser down the line will give the battery to both players. Although this system broke down on occasion in my experience. The Elektrokraftwerk, one of the three weapons which double as door-opening utilities, was picked up by me at some point during Austin and I's campaign, but not granted to Austin, despite being story-critical. We were able to find some more further down the narrative, but not before I had to open any electronic doors blocking our path myself. All the while, the Nazis you're fighting will have difficulty levels attributed to them, so a level 15 enemy, for instance, will be a bit challenging for a level 10 player or players to take on. For extreme level disparaging, enemies will simply be marked with Skull difficulty, meaning effectively, you do not want to fight them. They'll one-hit kill you given the chance. While I'll take any opportunity I can get to eliminate any and all Nazis from the world, sometimes stealth is the preferable option. In co-op, being able to mark enemies and coordinate with your partner alongside a cloaking ability allows for a dynamic of stealth not really possible in single-player titles. The maps, typically very well designed, give you some room for creative approaches under sneaky circumstances, although sometimes invisible boundaries will stop you from progressing somewhere benign. Still though, slipping through enemy lines with a friend is is a fun way to approach this game. In cases where enemies don't instantly eliminate you, getting caught isn't really a bad thing, it just means you get to kill Nazis. However, in the case of running out of health, taking too many hits, you'll be knocked into a stumble, barely able to move around and no longer able to fight. Your partner can revive you, but if it takes too long, one of you and your partner's shared extra lives will be taken. If you run out of extra lives, you'll be game over to the start of the area you're in. This is where this new pseudo-open world take on Wolfenstein is the most interesting and perhaps most flawed. There's a certain lack of focus in gameplay flow, starting from your hub area where you can resupply and take side quests. Entering into New Paris, you'll usually go into a district with specific quest in mind. However, along the way, randomly generated and repeatable side quests will pop up to drag you away from the more interesting full quests. Things like eliminate this particular enemy, grab this Enigma machine, rescue this citizen. While good deeds conceptually, the realization of this through gameplay typically amounts to interact with this one object to get experience before getting back to what you were actually doing. Rather than give the players more things to do, it feels like padding, something to make the required grinding for experience seem less monotonous unsuccessfully. The game is not quite able to be paced around the story, as it can't take into account players' different playstyles and level gaps between two players. Experience is unevenly distributed, and the high enemy levels simple progress gates. The decision to make Youngblood effectively a looter shooter rather than a smooth progression is questionable to me. Then again, at $30 or $40 or Game Pass, it's designed as a side game rather than a full entry, so I guess the experimentation makes more sense. Although said experiments do extend to the narrative and characters as well. I won't spoil the story, but let's talk about the player characters for a spell. Jess and Soph, the protags, are likable enough, aggressively 80s as they may be, and they goof around with each other as you'd expect teen sisters to. However, at times the joking gets a bit too lame, if I'm being honest. There's a moment near the beginning of the game where the sisters have to eliminate their first fascist, and they're celebrating doing it before coming to terms with having killed someone. A literal Nazi, mind you, but still having killed nonetheless. They process for a bit before jumping back into the fray. It's a heavy moment and handled pretty well. And from there on, the characters cease to have any real emotion other than sisterly jokes. I love their relationship, but the way it's portrayed goes from being excessively goofy to dark and emotional, back to goofy without any real transition between them. There's a functional implementation of this with the pep signals. These are boosts that you can do when near your partner, encouraging you to stick together, giving you both health, armor, a remote revive, things like that, all done via different gestures, dances, and taunts. The theming of battling against Nazis and the weight of taking lives, worthless as the Nazis may be, clashes hard with doing the robot and flipping off contests. It's not any worse than protagonists slinging cheesy one-liners and some other retro-style FPSs, but is absolutely a departure from the introspective monologuing of Blazkowicz in Wolfenstein 2. Then again, in a co-op setting where two players are assuredly in constant communication with one another, having less in-game dialogue is ideal. Though, when I say that, I do mean less in that the same three voice lines play between sisters on loop during combat. There's a certain lack of polish in Youngblood, which was not the case in the previous entries. This is most evident in the animations, or lack thereof, of the player characters, though issues persisted from the aesthetic to the more practical as time went on. There's some which are beneficial, like enemies losing all responsiveness and standing around waiting to be shot, and some are actively detrimental. While the first time Austin and I played, connecting to each other was flawless, the game had a crash with a generic error about an hour in. Then upon attempting to reconnect, we both got stuck in an infinite load loop. And now, every single time we play, after every loading screen, a giant error pops up claiming we've both run out of VRAM and need to lower our graphics settings, despite my GTX 1080 being plenty for the game and lowered settings not fixing the issue whatsoever. And once we're in-game, the actual looter shooter mechanics are a tad confused by the kind of microtransactions typical of lower-priced AAA games. Gotta make money somehow. Upon launch, you could use the premium currency of gold bars to purchase gameplay-altering offering boosts on some platforms. Those have all been removed, so at this point the paid items are all purely cosmetic. That said, mixing together the premium currency items with the standard ones is a bit cheap. To me, it feels like almost trying to trick you into buying items without realizing it, like a bad mobile game. Then again, I'm an impulsive person. As of the game's current state though, it's not really worth harping too much on the microtransactions. It's not like Youngblood is alone in modern gaming's monetization BS. I have a video all about that linked above and below. So, based off all of this, I can understand why people weren't pleased with Youngblood. It experimented with the genre, but at times feels half-baked in doing so. At the end of the day though, despite bugs, despite flaws, Wolfenstein Youngblood is fun. It's an enjoyable time killing Nazis with a friend. Coordinating, sneaking through complexes, highlighting enemies, and timing simultaneous assassinations. It's just co-op Wolfenstein at its core. The actual structure of the gameplay is still solid, and having another player to tag team with is enough of an addition to the formula to give Youngblood a worthy place among the other new entries. I'm less willing to forgive major flaws in a AAA game, but at half the typical AAA price, or with Game Pass, I'm not as concerned with cost to quality here. I can put up with some issues to enjoy Youngblood, but those issues are there nevertheless. Whether or not the game is for you will come down to how much bullshit you're willing to put up with. If you draw the line at being tempted into microtransactions, bad animations, connection issues, and occasional crashes, well, that's completely fair. But I've played so much Payday over the years that I got used to that. That'll be everything. Follow me on Twitter, link in the description. Thanks for watching, stay safe, and take it easy.